Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the panel for joining us here. I realize that we are the last panel between you and lunch, so we're going to try to keep this brief and chippy and make sure we stay on schedule. And in the interest of time, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So to my immediate left is Steve Sigmund, Vice Chief of Communications and Public Relations for the Gateway Development Commission. To his left is Rich Schaefer, VP of Capital Programs for NJ Transit. And to his left is Peter Matusewitch, who's the CEO of the Penn Station project for Penn Station Reconstruction for the MTA. To his left is Megan Strickland. And Megan, is the, Deputy Chief Program Officer for the Gateway Development Commission. And at the end is Petra Messick, who is the Senior Director of Portfolio Management for the Gateway Program for Amtrak. So we really have a broad array of folks here. And you've all, I really appreciate actually the last panel from Amtrak for not going too deep into Gateway, because I really thought that was going to be a challenge I would have here with this panel. But we're going to go a little deeper into Gateway as much as we can, but not very deep. So I also want to, acknowledge that the timing is really exciting for Gateway. You've probably all seen that there's a project delivery partner RFQ that was announced at the board meeting yesterday. That's supposed to be issued before the end of the year. Building upon the Amtrak's project delivery partner session, I think that's an exciting time for the Gateway program. So I'm going to get right into it. Start with Petra. Petra, can you please give the audience sort of an overview of the overall Gateway program, vision, goals, timeline, just kind of the whole program. So turn it to you.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Petra Messick. I'm a senior director at Amtrak. You've heard a lot from Amtrak in the last hour, so appreciate your patience with one more speaker. And like Craig, I've been with the company for 10 years. So my first day at Amtrak was the day that Superstorm Sandy made landfall in New York City. A very momentous and portentous time for the Gateway program because, in fact, it accelerated the need for Gateway because of the damage to the North River Tunnel, which Amtrak owns. That's our one intercity passenger rail tunnel under the Hudson River, one track in, one track out, which was damaged and flooded with seawater during Superstorm Sandy, and really accelerated the need for another tunnel so that we could go in and do the repair work for the existing tunnel. But that's not all of Gateway. Gateway is a generational investment program focused on the 10-mile stretch between New York Penn Station and Newark, New Jersey. It focuses on the area of the Northeast Corridor where we have the most rail traffic concentrated on the most narrowest stretch of tracks. So from Boston to Washington, we have sections that are 4 tracks, 6 tracks, but on this stretch that you see over my left shoulder, we narrow down to 2 tracks. It was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad and completed in 1910 for intercity trains. The planners who built this section of the railroad never foresaw the level of commuter rail traffic that we now have today. Daily 450 daily trains pounding those 2 tracks, over the Meadowlands into New York, and they've served us well over the years. But we do need to put certain assets out of their misery or renew them, rehab them, replace them, and therefore, we have a series of projects that together will result in bringing the existing 2 tracks to a state of good repair by replacing and modernizing these key assets, and then adding 2 tracks to add capacity to the corridor and to allow Amtrak to expand its services and bring new services into Penn Station, and to allow New Jersey Transit to expand its services, something that's long overdue and was delayed when the ARC tunnel project was canceled in 2010. So Gateway really, it has an intercity rail component. It has a sustainability component because It allows the most low carbon, energy efficient transportation mode in the region to flourish, and it connects the affordable New Jersey suburbs, which provide housing choices, for the citizens of our region, residents of our region, with the highest paying jobs in the Manhattan Central Business District. And it sort of, alleviates this constraint on our regional economy that's existed for many decades now. So we do this through a series of projects. Portal North Bridge is now under construction. Hudson Tunnel Project is on the precipice. You'll hear more about that in this panel. Amtrak commenced preliminary engineering of 4 projects this year: Penn Station expansion, Sawtooth Bridge's replacement project, Harrison Fourth Track, and Dock Bridge rehab. And then there are 4 more projects that are in concept planning, such as Portal South Bridge and Secaucus Junction capacity expansion, the Bergen Loop, and the rail yard for New Jersey Transit. So that's probably enough for me. Keep things moving, but happy to chime in at later points.
That's awesome. Thanks, Petra. So, Rich, turning to you, as the Portal North Bridge project is the most visible one currently under construction on the system. I wonder if you can give the audience sort of a highlight of where you are on the project, what the timeline is, kind of budget, scope, and maybe some talk about the funding and financing. And I remember I've seen the sledgehammer that was used to close the old Portal Bridge when it stuck in the open position. So everyone's excited about this project. So Rich, up to you.
Bridge is fine.
Excellent.
We are, it is, I think, the single biggest thing that's going on right now. $1.55 billion for the construction bid, not including all the additional stuff that goes around the side. It is on time, on schedule, on budget. We have been feverishly working. Anybody here who is taking the train to New Jersey, I'm sure you've all looked out the window and going, where are the beams? Where are the beams? Where are the beams? Why don't I see it here? There's a lot of work that has to take place. It is possibly one of the most challenging bridges that you're going to see built, particularly for a railroad, through some of the most challenging environments that you're ever going to see anywhere, including sites that used to make Agent Orange, have those tasty little chromium capsules that you shouldn't give to children, contaminated water, and protected meadowlands. The bridge is so big, take a moment to consider that the smaller spans, the beams of that bridge would fill this room. They would tickle the ceiling. So there are bridges being built to build bridges and cranes being built to build cranes who will erect the things that become that bridge. And it is moving. We have a really good relationship with our partners at Amtrak and with Skanska, who is the Skanska Trailer Joint Venture, who's the contractor. And it is moving. As we move forward, it is fraught with risk, as any large project is. There are a lot of never-befores here. There are monstrous drilled shafts, enormous beams, network-tied arches, floated-in elements, all sorts of things. But by and large, it's actually going fairly well. At the end of the day, it's a bridge. And a bridge is a bridge no matter how big it is, and we know how to do that as an industry. And like any other project, it's made of 3 components. It's risk, materials, and time, and you add that together in a blender and you get a price. That price was $1.55 billion. We are moving forward in the, right now, I think we're in the foundations. We've got all the platforms in place. For those of you who are familiar with the delivery method of the bridge, it's design, bid, build. So we actually had a complete set of plans built. I want to say the plans printed on 11 by 17 are about a 3-foot thick stack on my floor. I can actually put my coffee cup on it. And that is moving well. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the bridge. I wish I had something more to offer, but it's not really a problem. I do think it's appreciated I think it's worthwhile to appreciate the enormity of a bridge or a project that over the course of 5 years is going to consume $1.5 billion. So take a minute and think that a delay of a day, you don't have protection, something goes wrong, you have a bad weather day. On any project, you're going to get a delay for a day that's going to come out of a contractor. How much do you think a day costs at peak construction on Portal? This is a quiz. Some people need to raise hands. No? $5 million a day.
Ouch.
Is what we're playing with. So everything has 2 people looking at it, 3 people checking it. And so far, seems to be working. That's all I have to offer.
Great. Well, thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. It's an exciting project, so we're all excited to see it move forward. I'm going to change gears a bit. Steve, I want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about the Gateway Development Commission, its makeup, its role in the program, and kind of, clear any confusion that the audience might have over who the Gateway Development Commission is.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, and thanks for having us. So the commission was created in 2019 by the states of New York and New Jersey as a partnership between New York, New Jersey, and Amtrak by legislation. And it was created essentially because there, as you see on the stage and from previous panels, there are so many entities involved in the various aspects of the Gateway program that the idea was to have a commission that would kind of oversee and be able to coordinate all of the various aspects of it and take direct responsibility for certain aspects, right? So the commission has taken direct responsibility. We are the project sponsor now, as of October, for the Hudson Tunnel project, which is commonly called the Gateway Tunnel. It's the most kind of well-known and well-told story in the Gateway program. So the commission operates with 7 commissioners. 3 are from New York, 3 are from New Jersey, and 1 is from Amtrak, all with equal votes. And really is developed to ensure that there is a partnership in moving Gateway forward. In particular, moving the Hudson Tunnel project forward, which is sort of the linchpin in the entire program, because the bottom line is one entity can't go it alone. Right? It's not, Rich was talking about the complexities and cost of the Portal North project, at somewhere around $2 billion. Our current cost estimate is about $16 billion, $14 billion if we get more federal money, which we're pitching for. So if there's any people in Congress here, more federal money, please. But so it's however many times, 7 times the complexity and cost of an incredibly complex and costly project, right? So we couldn't go it alone. So the idea was to bring all these entities together to build this incredibly important project, and as we go forward, potentially provide more coordination on the other Gateway program projects.
Thanks, Steve. And just to follow up, how has GDC generated public support for the program, and what are the key risks you see from your perspective?
Thanks. Actually, public support has been terrific, I have to say. I mean, actually, you use the sledgehammer story, and that goes back actually to it's the Portal Bridge, but it was part of the Gateway program, and that goes back actually to our chairman when we were the corporation, when we were a nonprofit corporation initially in like 2017, 2018. A guy named Jerry Zero in New Jersey, who started telling the story about how when the existing Portal Bridge, which is a 112-year-old swing bridge, which gets stuck in place going back, when it wouldn't go back into place, it holds up the entire Northeast corridor, right? Which is incredible. And so somebody had to go out there with a sledgehammer and sledgehammer it back in place. And so at one point he calls me and he says, is that story true? I really hope so. And so we had to go find out, actually, if it was a true story. And it is a true story that happened. So I say that because the storytelling about the need for these projects and the need for the Hudson Tunnel project, has been very strong and has had enormous support on both sides of the river, federally, from stakeholders, from keeping it alive during the Trump administration, a lot from people in this room, who've kept the story alive. So I think it's really a matter of lots and lots of people who know the situation and the direness of the situation on a 112-year-old link between New York and New Jersey, consistently over and over again, telling the story to stakeholders who matter, telling it to the public. I actually had a guy on the platform today waiting in Maplewood for a late train. It took me 2 hours to get here this morning. Say to me, "Oh, I see that bridge is getting built. It really seems crazy that they had to have a sledgehammer put it back in place, right?" So I mean, these stories we tell about the delays in the tunnel, about the bridge, about the entire link, they get out into the public consciousness when you tell them over and over and over again. So the need has been told. What we need to get to is delivering on the money, and you can move on to the other folks on that part.
Well, let me follow up on that. on that point. So Megan, can you describe the funding and financing strategy for the Gateway program, the current?
Members of Congress, if you're here, we would like to please see me after. No, and Steve is absolutely right. Part of the Gateway Development Commission, what we're really focused on is partnership, right? Partnership with New York and New Jersey, with the Port Authority, New Jersey Transit, and Amtrak, of course, but really with our federal partners as well. And so in 2023, you'll see GDC really moving forward with our full funding grant agreement. We have our eye on the prize. And so we'll be working very closely through our risk assessment and entering engineering to be able to set us up as a federal grant recipient. But of course, that wouldn't be possible if we didn't have strong commitment from our partners in New York and New Jersey to provide that local share. So we will be applying for every grant opportunity that Mr. Goodman will put out and his team.
Great, thanks, Megan. Turning to Peter at the MTA as kind of Penn Station focus, and we heard from Sharon Tepper for the Amtrak perspective, but maybe Peter, you could describe the MTA's kind of role in the project and what the scope is, what you're responsible for, and how you're coordinating with Amtrak. That would be great.
Certainly. So in March of 2020, the three railroads began a master planning effort for Penn Station with FX Collaborative and WSP as our design consultants. With all three railroads recognizing that the station needed to be rethought. It was the result of essentially of successive failure. And the accumulated failures in the design and construction of the station, we were now past doing Band-Aids on it. Something big had to happen. The contract was held by MTA, and managed by MTA on behalf of all three railroads. I had the honor of managing that contract. The master plan was an unflinching look at what we need to do to fix the station. And so we didn't back away from anything. We didn't back away from any of its problems. We recognized all the problems. We said, okay, what has to drive a solution to this poor station, this collection of levels underground, under Madison Square Garden and under the 2 Penn Plaza office building. Now, we have some really good things to work with. It's a 2 square block footprint in Midtown Manhattan. It's enormous. So that was the greatest advantage we have, and we decided to make the best use of that advantage. The things that drive our solution include historically 80% of the passengers using Penn Station have come from the east and the north, or gone to the east and the north, about half by walking and half by subway. With the development of the far west side, that's changing. It's about 70% now, or will be when the far west side is fully built out. So that means that the real action is on the east side of the station, right? That's where the majority of our people come in from. And historically, about 2/3 of passengers have boarded their trains from the east half of the station. So we knew we had to focus on the east half of the station. On the other hand, you got the 8th Avenue end of the station, which faces Moynihan. You can't forget about it, right? It's not like we can do half the station. You've got to do both halves. We also recognized that roughly 88% of passengers boarded their trains or alighted from their trains onto the lower level, about 12% on the upper level. So, okay, the action was on the lower level, not the upper level. This directed us to the concept that we should have a single level in the station. That should be the lower level. But the lower level of ceiling is very low, right? In places as little as 6 feet 8 inches to 7 feet. And that's terrible. That's like a rabbit warren. So if we're going to do that, if we're going to have a station, a single level station focused around the lower level, we need really higher ceilings, right? So what we came up with is you got to open those ceilings up in all those concourses. The concourses are very confusing. Some of them are incomplete. They don't make a lot of sense. We need to rationalize all the concourses. The station's crowded, certainly on that lower level. And if we're going to put all of our passengers on the lower level, it'll get even more crowded. So those concourses all need to be much larger. So that directed us to a rationalized grid of concourses that are much wider. We remove the upper level above those concourses and have 2 to 3 levels high ceiling, right? Nothing lower than about 18 feet, going up to about 32 feet in various places. So we get rid of that rapid warrant. This is, in general, how we think about the station. MTA also holds the contract for the environmental study for the reconstruction and for the environmental study for the expansion, whereas Amtrak holds the contract for the preliminary design of the expansion. And let me just say a word about this idea of an expansion. Right? The idea of an expansion comes from the NEC Future study done by the Federal Railroad Administration, completed in 2017. And the idea that the station should be expanded was came from the fact that it had to meet two goals: that we're going to double train traffic from the west, right, from between Newark and Penn Station across the Hudson River. You need a lot more tracks and platforms to do that. And NEC Future vision was that 2 more tunnels would be added under the East River from the expansion in order to facilitate some kind of cross-regional through running, which of course is how all the major cities of the world nowadays handle their regional integration. This decision to do it through an expansion is based on international practice. In other words, in all the cities around the world where this has been done, it's been done by adding additional tracks and platforms, expanding the station horizontally or sometimes a level below, because regional through running service needs to be like a transit service, headway based, running through, at a really brisk pace. Whereas commuter railroads and intercity are a completely different kind of operation. They're schedule based. So all around the world, they've recognized that you got to separate these services. So all around the world, what they've done is they've built purpose-built facilities for this new kind of service. And that's what drove the decision in NEC Future that Penn Station needs to be expanded. Now, of course, NEC Future had a Tier 1 environmental impact statement that studied the impacts to the entire corridor, but you still have to do a Tier 2 impact statement for each of the infrastructure improvements. So the expansion will have an environmental impact statement, and you have to consider alternatives. So nonetheless, even though we know from international experience that the way to do this is to expand the station, we will consider other alternatives in our feasibility studies, which we are doing right now, including converting Penn Station to all through running within its footprint and not expanding the station. That is being studied, and the results of that studies will inform the environmental impact statement. But these things don't come out of the air. We're very firmly grounded in international experience in how to do these things.
Fascinating. So complicated what's going on at Penn Station. Petra, anything to add on from an Amtrak perspective?
No, that was very well said.
It's amazing that what gets done there. Also along those lines, I mean, there's so many mega projects that we've talked about today, and we've talked about. You heard Rick Cotton talk about all the airport projects and the bus terminal. They're all sort of coming together. 2024, 2025. Maybe Rich and Peter could talk about strategies that you've thought about or employed or plan to employ to deal with the scarcity of labor, workforce, engineers, inspectors. The industry is, kind of in the need for those resources. So, curious to hear what strategies you guys might have put in place around that issue.
So it's a real problem. There just isn't enough to go around. And this is something that has ballooned. This isn't a sustainable level where we were at for 30 years. We are going double, triple, quadruple the amount of work coming out. It affects everybody. It affects exactly as you said, the engineers, the crafts. And when you make a capital project, as I said, there's 3 basic ingredients. You have risk, you have time, you have materials. Time is what drives so much of those crafts and those resources in terms of engineering and railroad workers. I mean, by and large, I am an engineer. I don't want to belittle the trade, but it's a fairly portable career. Have comp pad will travel, but railroad workers are made from railroads. You can't just mass produce them, and railroad workers are what govern the business on the rail. And that's when you have to go back to that basic equation. You have your risk. How much risk can you accept as an owner or a contractor or an engineer? how much materials you're going to consume. And materials are getting tough too. It's tough to find things like Portland cement. Not impossible. Steel, I've seen priced anywhere from head cheese to filet mignon lately, sometimes double. And copper, I don't even want to talk about copper. But those, by and large, are the smaller components. In a modern construction environment, most of the cost of a project is the labor. Kind of an inverse from conventional wisdom. We try so hard to limit how much material we use. We need to limit how much labor we use across the board. And that's kind of where you get into that time component. Anything you can do to limit the time on a project, from what I've seen and come in and across in our prices, and what we've been hearing from contractors is there's so much work out. They want to produce. They want to do more. They want to do now. They don't want to wait 6 months for a sheave. They don't want to sit on their butts for 12 months waiting for a switch to come in from Switzerland. That's not why they're there. They want to process the job and move on to the next one. And the same thing with everybody else. So anything you can do to compress the time. The jobs we've seen come in at about a year in terms of duration, year to 18 months, have been pretty good. We all talk about COVID, inflation, everything else going on, but if the contractors know they're going to be on a job for a year and it's a clean schedule, limited risk, you might pay a 5% premium, maybe a 10%, but these are things that you would expect. When you put out a job that's going to take 5 or 6 years, you have multiple phases of railroad protection, environmental risks, you're going to pay double. Just accept that and move on with your life. Anything you can do to limit the amount of time you have on a job, compartmentalize your risks, throw that in the blender, that I think is the future that we're going to see. And this isn't new thinking. I mean, there have been different times in the world where these sorts of situations have cropped up. We had the Continental Railroad. It took 6 years to build because they managed those resources in dubious ways. You had the Works Progress Administration, which was at the time the largest expansion, and they found all sorts of innovative ways to cut time and do things faster through standardization. And then you had the Eisenhower Highway Bill, where it was cookie cutter bridges over and over and highway. But those are the types of things that we need to go back to and focus on simplicity. I myself am challenged by an engineer comes to me and says, I spent 3 weeks and I saved 10% of this steel. And I'm like, I want to strangle you. No, I need you to have that design done 3 weeks ago. That was more important to me than 20 pounds of steel. And I think that's kind of the go now that we have to adopt if we're going to get through this with the resources that we have.
Great. Thanks, Peter.
Similar experience. As part of the master plan, we did a in-depth schedule for both the reconstruction and expansion, and the craft needs for those projects. We actually, did a projection of assuming a certain overlap on the two projects. Where would we peak out on craft workers? And we peaked out somewhere between 5,500 and 6,000 people in a basically 3-block area of Manhattan. That was a terrifying number, right? Both from how do you get them in and out and from where we find them. This is something the whole industry is going to continue to grapple with. Now, part of how we're dealing with that at MTA is changing what we're looking for from our contractors. But by law, MTA is a design-build organization. All of our projects are design-build now. So we're changing the criteria by which we're selecting the design builder. It's which one offers the most innovation, which one can come up with the fastest schedule with the fewest people, not just the lowest price, but getting in there and getting out of there as quickly as possible. A good example of that, for instance, was our third track project out on Long Island, where the winning proposal changed our design, changed where they're going to put the tracks and how they're going to move things around, and said if we do it this way, we can lop off, well, almost a year off the project. Well, and it was like, yeah, you got the contract. We're currently letting out one for the Park Avenue Viaduct, and it's not public yet, but there was a proposal that was a whole hell of a lot faster than the others. You can imagine what our reaction was, right? It's like, well, yeah, that's what we want, right? It's not just how many projects are going, how long are they? Because that tells you how much overlap there's going to be. The longer the craft workers have to be on one project, then the longer it is before they can move on to another project. We're going to have to be very efficient, and we're going to have to stimulate that kind of efficiency in the industry. And what we can deploy more than anything else is making it clear to contractors how we're going to choose them.
Great, thanks. So along those lines, talking about design build as your kind of go-to delivery strategy, just want to ask Megan, in terms of the Hudson Tunnel project or a gateway program, what project delivery strategies do you intend to employ, and maybe why?
Sure. So I think just to dovetail off what you were saying is we have to be creative. And so, back in 2017, 2018, there were some, outreach to the market to determine what was the best contracting strategy for the tunnel. And I think right now, we're in our request to enter into engineering. We're going through a very thorough risk assessment. And I think right now we're thinking everything's on the table. And we really want to hear back from the industry in terms of what is doable right now with the resources that are available, and the risk allocation, between the contractor and our group. And so I think you'll be hearing more in the coming months. We're looking for an industry day in the new year also to really solicit that feedback, and determine what's best, for the GDC and for the Hudson Tunnel project. Right now, we're also very focused. You talked a little bit. You stole my thunder there, Mark.
Sorry.
About the project delivery partner, which is a new concept for us. And we're working also to deliver that RFQ by the end of the year to figure out, what kind of partnership really works for this arrangement. You have the states, you have multiple agencies, you have multiple scopes of work, you have interface risk between all of those scopes of work, and what kind of partner, is best for GDC and arrangement will work, to be able to deliver this in the most efficient and transparent manner, which is always our goal. So we're very focused on that. So please keep an eye out for that by the end of this year. And also, moving towards some early action work. Tunley Avenue Bridge is a project that we just recently submitted a federal grant application, and there will be a solicitation coming out for construction and construction management services in the new year. So we're starting to push ahead, but also really looking to solicit feedback and determine what's best for this project, and this massive endeavor we're about to embark on.
Awesome, thank you. Rich, just curious if you could add, what drove you to the decision to use design bid build on the Portal North project?
I wasn't there at the time. It makes sense. I am a firm believer. I know that there are laws in some states, but there is no silver bullet. And there are design bid build makes sense when you need exactly what you need when you need it. Design build makes sense when you don't have the schedule risks or the coordination risks. And some of the newer vehicles, CMGC, CMAR, show a lot of promise for when you don't really even know what the right solution is or how to approach it. There's opportunities in there for teaming, and you got to take it case by case.
Right, there's probably a whole other panel that could be had on the project delivery strategies and why.
Mark, can I jump in?
Sorry, Petra, sorry, go ahead.
A few thoughts. Well, I just wanted to note that the Gateway program is, this massive program. It's being delivered over many years. And, as such, one thing I neglected to mention at the outset is that it's very much a partnership. It's a partnership between the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, Amtrak, and the federal government. And in order to deliver all these different projects over this long timeline, different partners are taking the lead on different projects. So Portal North Bridge, primarily a partnership between Amtrak and New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit is the project sponsor and holds the contract with Skanska and is delivering the project. Amtrak is playing certain roles that involve the systems of delivering, aspects of the railroad systems and commissioning the bridge. And so, in a similar fashion, Hudson Tunnel project, or in a different fashion, that is, GDC will be the project sponsor and recently assumed that role. And then there's consideration going on right now about, which partner is in the best role to deliver each construction package of the Hudson Tunnel project, to sort of take advantage of each agency's skill set or, unique attributes that, are best suited for that construction package. So going forward, as we look ahead, over the decade plus remaining to deliver the other elements of the Gateway program, there are other projects that Amtrak will likely take the lead role as project sponsor. And it also has to do with the color of federal money that we receive. The FTA program, the Capital Investment Grant Program, has been the source of the Portal North Bridge project, which is one of the reasons New Jersey Transit is a project sponsor for that FTA project. And similarly, Hudson Tunnel Project is lining up in the CIG program to receive its biggest grant from the FTA. But looking ahead, now we have this new source of funding from the Federal Railroad Administration, which Amtrak is perhaps more suited and more positioned to receive. So that's really exciting. The Fed-State Partnership for Intercity Rail Program has $24 billion available for Northeast Corridor projects. And Amtrak will likely take the lead on projects like the Sawtooth Bridges Replacement Project and the Dock Bridge Rehabilitation Project, which are well suited as major backlog projects to get up to 80% of FRA funding for those projects. So I just wanted to give a sample that we have this massive program over decade plus to deliver. We have 2 states and multiple agencies being able to deliver the different projects at different times using different colors of federal money, and all working together in different roles, and probably using different project delivery models as well for these different projects or different construction packages in the same project. So it's just, it's like we have to use all the tools in the toolbox to get this done because it's such a large undertaking.
Thanks,
So just to echo that for a minute or add to it, what makes Gateway unique, or what makes really infrastructure projects unique, and putting them together in a way that we do in Gateway is the amount of partnership and the amount of or the number of agencies and different funding sources involved. It also makes it really, really hard, right? And really hard to tell the story, and really hard to coordinate well, and to figure out who's going to do what when, and how you're going to get the people and contractors to do those projects. Gateway as a program doesn't really exist except as a branding piece, right? And we basically, Amtrak really, I should be given credit for figuring out that there was a way to tell this story in a connected way, because it is the 10 miles from New York to New Jersey. But each of these projects exists independently, right? And exists separately and has separate utility. But there is a harder story to tell about, the need for the Sawtooth Bridge, for example, if it's not connected to the fact that that helps expand capacity through the tunnel and double capacity between New York and New Jersey and free up the whole Northeast Corridor, right? So it became a storytelling opportunity that has worked, right? People know about Gateway, they know about the program, they know about the tunnel. I believe it helped to get the infrastructure bill passed last year and put infrastructure on the map at storytelling. I remember I used to, worked in transportation communications for a long time, and the New York Times op-ed guidelines used to say, don't use boring words like infrastructure, right? And so now, that has totally changed. And, it's important that we continue to figure out sort of innovative ways, not just to approach these things from an actual delivery standpoint, but from a storytelling, partnership, government relations connection standpoint.
Sawtooth actually has a really good story. We just haven't started telling it yet.
So I think there's a book in your future, Steve, on stakeholder management in this program. That's all. It's very complicated. So maybe to kind of round it out, Steve, another one for you, and feel free, anyone else who wants to chime in, but kind of strategies related to the environment, to sustainable infrastructure and carbon reduction on the program. We've heard a lot about that today, so it'd be great to hear what the strategies are.
Yeah, I think some of the others on this panel can talk more deeply about the specificity of the strategies. But again, in terms of sort of how we've got this through the environmental impact statement phase, through communities, through municipalities that are affected, through going through the federal funding process, getting the states support and putting a lot of money commitment behind it. is telling the story of the fact that it adds to sustainability, keeps carbon out of the air. The RPA did a study that if even one of the tubes went down among a number of terrible things that would happen, is 2.6 million tons of carbon dioxide being released in the air at 30-minute additional commutes, through cars, which add a lot of congestion to the air. And there's an obvious sustainability and environmental benefit to people switching from cars to trains, or not being forced out of trains by delays and getting back into already congested routes. So there's just sort of a basic story around that, and of course, in the environmental work that we have to do in the project itself, in terms of the kinds of mitigations that we have to do, and the kinds of sort of new innovations and technologies in the actual construction itself to make sure that it is sustainable.
Great, thanks. Anyone else want to chime in on?
Sure. I'll just echo Steve's sort of macro approach to that question, and that, where is the most sustainable place to live in the United States? Cities, right? And how do you ensure that cities can continue to, play that role in the region? Will you ensure that people can get to them, and that they have low carbon rail transportation networks that connect to them? And if we can't continue to allow people to access the center of our region's jobs and housing and culture and education with rail, then all of that investment at a certain point reaches a carrying capacity. We become locked in by congestion. And so it's a comprehensive strategy of congestion pricing and reinvesting in our public transit system and our regional rail networks and our intercity rail networks that connect them, to ensure that regions can fulfill their role as the most sustainable land use form that we have. Connecting jobs and housing to transit. But shifting gears to the micro scale, most of the elements of the Gateway program are replacing or expanding rail infrastructure. But Penn Station expansion is a unique example where, should we, if we successfully navigate the federal NEPA process and succeed with a preferred alternative that expands the station with a new tracks and platforms and concourses and buildings, then we will strive to adopt the most cutting-edge sustainable design standards, and looking at the entire life cycle of delivering a massive amount of new concrete and steel and all the systems that go with that, to remake a portion of the center of Manhattan. So I approach it from the macro and the micro, and with Penn expansion, I think we really have an opportunity to be innovative in climate sustainability and resiliency.
Okay. Yep, Peter. Go ahead.
MTA has a relatively little known but extraordinarily active transit-oriented development program. We are the major promoter of transit-oriented development anywhere in the New York region, partly because MTA has an enormous amount of property that could be developed, and the idea being put jobs where the transit is, and to connect communities to each other. The East Side Access, now Grand Central Madison, will finally allow people from Long Island to directly access the east side of Manhattan. Penn Station Access will allow people from Westchester to directly access west side of West Midtown. In the future, NEC Future envisioned regional cross-regional through running through our expansion to connect communities on each side of Manhattan to each other. All these things are critical to a larger vision of sustainability. We're certainly committed to it. Amtrak is committed to it. New Jersey Transit is committed to it. New Jersey Transit is growing like a goddamn weed. I mean, the increase in population in parts of Jersey that connect to New York City is off the charts. Getting those people into New York City in a sustainable way is so central to making this region work. Is why we're all here. why we're on this panel, why we're doing these projects. So, you know, it's Amtrak, it's New Jersey Transit, and MTA, and we're in each other's laps. We have to do this together.
Am I the only, you're an engineer, right?
I am.
Well, thank God. From an engineering perspective, let's talk about this is something that's been bothering me, so I'm going to offer it. Sustainability for us. We're injecting 66 billion. A whole lot of money is going into a system that is not prepared to accept it. You can throw as much money as you want into the world, but I can't go to New Flyer and say make more buses faster. They only have one shop. I can't go to High Steel in Allentown and say I need 50 beams today instead of 20. You know, they only have one factory floor. I can't go up to Alstom in New York and say I need more trains because they only got one shop. There's only so much money that a system can accept before you start seeing that degradation. You're running it too fast. No machine runs at 100% efficiency. And a lot of these projects are generational. There are interns on my shop floor who are going to finish these projects that we're talking about today, whether it's a tunnel. For reference, I think no chief engineer has survived their own tunnel. They all seem to die on the job. You want to No. But one of the things we need to all work together on is as we spend this money, we need to do it in an even, ever-increasing, slowly pace so that we're building the system around us that can furnish this back. We want to build a system that gets us to the sustainable cities. We want to get people out of our growing weed state, thank you, and get them into New York or wherever they want to go, in Jersey too. And they have to get through tunnels. And all these things have to work together because if we just flood the system, it's going to blow up in our faces. We're all going to look like fools. We need to build an industry in and of ourselves that is sustainable and these people need to know these jobs are a consistent, even flow of capital and jobs and work and improvements and cities that are constantly improving. The herky-jerkiness, transit runs hot and cold, is something that we need to be cognizant of when we advance these projects. And I know you're all hungry, so I'm going to shut up.
Well, I appreciate your participation in the panel. Thank you very much. I know you're all hungry, like you said, Rich. So, Ken, I'm going to fulfill my promise, get this done on time. And thanks again for your participation.